The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the member for Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to oppose this motion because while those opposite are very good at talking up concern, they are far less interested in acknowledging what is actually happening globally. Australians are not naive. They are watching global events unfold, particularly in the Middle East, and they understand that instability in energy markets has very real consequences here at home. They see it, they can feel it, and what they expect from their government in moments like this is not panic. It is competence, coordination and a clear plan. And that is exactly what this government is delivering. We've been actively managing this situation, not reacting late, not scrambling, but planning, coordinating and acting. We've boosted supply by releasing up to 20% of fuel reserves. We've amended fuel standards to bring more supply into the market, and we've supported domestic refining capacity because sovereign capability matters. And we've put into place the coordination architecture needed to manage a challenge of this scale. A dedicated fuel supply task force, national cabinet engagement, industry roundtables with transport, agriculture and fuel suppliers, the national coordination mechanism activated, and the National Oil Suppliers Emergency Committee convened. That is what a plan looks like. But critically, we are also providing immediate practical relief to Australians. The government has halved the fuel excise for 3 months, cutting around 26 per litre off the price of petrol and diesel. That's real cost of living relief, around $19 off a typical tank at a time when households are under pressure. And we've reduced the heavy vehicle road user charge to zero to help take pressure off freight and supply chains, because fuel is not optional in this country. It underpins everything. It's how food moves from farms to supermarkets. It's how medicines are delivered. It's how tradies, manufacturers and transport operators keep working. And in outer metropolitan electorates like mine, in Moore, that reliance is front and centre. Across our growing suburbs and around Joondalup, people rely on their cars to get to work, run small businesses and keep things moving. And let's be clear, when fuel prices spike, it's not abstract in places like Moore. It's tradies cancelling jobs because the margins don't stack up. It's small businesses absorbing higher delivery costs. It's families thinking twice about every trip, from school drop-offs to weekend sport. That's why measures like halving the fuel excise matter, not as a media grab, but as real relief right now. Before coming to this place, I worked as an electrician on commercial and industrial sites. And I can tell you this, systems don't run on rhetoric. They run on planning, coordination and reliable inputs, like fuel. That is what this government understands. Now compare it to those opposite, because we've seen this before. When Australia faced a national crisis during COVID, we saw what happens when planning isn't there. Supply chains under pressure, confusion and a government scrambling to catch up. And when it comes to fuel security, their record speaks for itself. 4 out of Australia's 6 refineries closed under the coalition. 4. 2 of those closures occurred when the current opposition leader was the energy minister. And at that time, he said those closures would not negatively impact Australia's fuel supply. That is not just wrong, it shows a fundamental misunderstanding of fuel security, because when you hollow out domestic refining capacity, you increase dependence on imports, you increase exposure to global shocks, and that is exactly the vulnerability we are now working to manage. And then there is the decision to spend close to $100 million storing fuel in the United States, 14,000 kilometres away. You do not strengthen Australia's fuel security by storing fuel on another continent. So when those opposite come in here and claim concern, Australians are entitled to ask, where was that concern when the decisions that weakened our system were being made? Because the contrast is clear. They talked, we're acting. They weakened capacity, we are strengthening it. They outsourced resilience, we are rebuilding it. This motion suggests Australians should be worried that nothing is being done. That is simply not true. What is being done is significant, it is coordinated and is focused on protecting Australians from the worst impacts of a volatile global environment. And in moments like this, what matters is not who can raise the loudest concern. What matters who is actually doing the work. This government is doing the work, and that is why I reject this motion.